If you want to learn how to sell high-ticket consulting services to organizations, you first have to understand the difference between selling to B2B decision makers versus individual clients. And I'm going to break that down for you in this video. Plus, before we go, I'm also going to share with you a powerful positioning shift that can make all the difference in your credibility and your close rate. So if you have consulting services to offer clients and you're thinking about looking for those high ticket opportunities, which often come from working with organizations like the Fortune 1000, mid-market companies, nonprofits, colleges, and universities, you really have to understand the mindset that come from of the decision makers who are going to be the ones investing time to meet with you and ultimately saying yes or no to buying your high ticket consulting services. And so what I want to do today is really share with you some of the things that are unique about those decision makers. But before we get to that, let me first share with you the similarities, the things that are the same about decision makers in the B2B space as it is with individual clients. So if you're here right now, you're thinking about how you sell high-ticket consulting services, which is probably going to involve selling your services to organizations like the Fortune 1000, nonprofits, colleges, universities, even mid-markets and larger small enterprises. Organizations that really have the budget to buy high-ticket consulting services and really can fully benefit from your expertise. And in order to do that successfully, you really have to go inside the minds of decision makers and understand what compels them to make a yes decision to work with someone like you. So before I get into the differences between working with B2B or corporate decision makers versus working with individual clients, I want to share with you what's similar between selling to a one-to-one client versus selling to a B2B client, because believe it or not, there's actually a lot of things that aren't different at all. So let's take a look. The first is that familiarity and trust matters more than anything. Anytime a decision maker is saying yes to working with you, they're putting their professional reputation and relationship capital inside their company on the line because they're the ones saying, yes, we should work with this outside expert. So that requires trust. And it also requires familiarity because decision makers can't buy from you if they don't know who you are. There's a reason that the adage exists that the expert at hand is the expert who's hired. So whether you're selling to solo experts or solopreneurs or individual clients, or you're selling to corporate decision makers, familiarity and trust reign supreme. The next thing that's the same with almost anyone that you're selling to is that clients want clarity, not confusion. They want clarity, not confusion. Clear, outcome-driven offers are always going to perform better. The next is they need to feel like it's the right fit. Even if you've been selling to small business owners, no doubt they've asked themselves, is this what we really need right now? Corporate decision makers, B2B decision makers are going to ask themselves the same question. Next, just like any client you've been dealing with, they need to justify the investment. The value has to outweigh the cost of working with you. And of course, they're going to be persuaded by social proof and credibility. It's going to close the gap. If you're selling consulting services, you're selling the invisible. That's a hard thing for anybody to evaluate whether or not you do or do not know enough about what you do in order to affect change and drive the outcome that they're looking for. So things like testimonials, case studies, metrics, and examples are going to help close that gap. The next one is understanding that even when it comes to B2B decision makers, emotions play a role. In fact, research shows that corporate decision makers are slightly more driven by personal decision drivers than they are by business decision drivers. That means things like the vision, mission, and values of your coaching company, your consulting company, your services company is important to share. If you have a social impact cause that you care about, that you contribute to, those are the kinds of things that are really really important to share. And here's one more thing that's the same whether you're selling in the B2B world or you're selling in the B2C world. And that is that sales cycles can be extremely fast or they can be extremely slow. We have seen sales cycles take multiple years working with small business owners, corporations, nonprofits, government agencies, or it can happen virtually overnight when there is an urgent need that a decision maker is looking to fill. So don't think that just because it's a corporate decision maker or a B2B decision maker that the sales cycle is necessarily going to be slow. It's actually going to be driven always by urgency, and that's something you can't control. It's one of the reasons why having your pipeline full is so critical to your consistent cash flow in your business. You need to have enough decision makers in your pipeline so that their urgency doesn't create a feast or famine cycle in your business. So here are some of the things that are different between selling to one-to-one clients versus selling to corporate and B2B decision makers. The first is that one-to-one clients are spending their own time, money, and resources, whereas B2B decision makers are spending their employer's time, money, and resources. That means they're almost risking more because it's their professional reputation that's on the line, not just a charge on their credit card. The next thing is that selling to one-to-one clients, it's a personal decision. In selling to decision makers, it's a decision-making team. And let me tell you, when it comes to decisions and decision teams inside of organizations, teamwork definitely does not make the dream work for you, but it is a reality inside of organizations. The next difference is that one-to-one clients are looking to solve an individual pain point, whereas B2B decision makers are looking to solve a team, department, or company challenge. It's not about their own personal benefit. And sometimes the problem or challenge that is being faced that you're going to help them solve isn't even something that that decision maker is directly experiencing themselves. One of the key differences between selling to one-to-one clients versus B2B decision makers is that when it comes to individual clients, they're solving an individual pain point, whereas a corporate decision maker is looking to solve a problem or a challenge that's affecting an entire team, department, or company. Big difference. That also means that in the one-to-one client world, the buyer is the one who is experiencing the challenge firsthand. When you work with them, they're the ones that are directly benefiting. But when you're working with B2B buyers, not necessarily. They could be responsible for solving the problem, but not necessarily experiencing it themselves. That's why we say in the B2B space, there can often be a difference between pain and purse. Those who are experiencing the pain inside the organization may not have the purse strings to solve it. The decision maker who does have the purse strings may not be experiencing the pain. The next difference is that there are fewer interdependencies in working with one-to-one clients. They pretty much control the entire map. When you get into the B2B space, there are much more complex interdependencies. And it's one of the reasons why we spend so much time at Bold House really teaching our collective members how to navigate conversations that are inside of companies, because you have to be able to bring everyone together and create a feeling of consensus around the decision to work with you. The next difference is that on the side of selling to one-to-one clients, it could very much be a personal growth or lifestyle as the goal, something that they really want for themselves. Whereas inside organizations, it's all about business performance, metrics, and ROI. On the one-to-one side of the table, your objections come down to personal risk or personal budget. On the B2B side of things, the objections are about internal optics, politics, or timing more so than anything. On the one-to-one side, you have limited resources and bandwidth. You have one individual, and oftentimes their plate is overflowing. Meanwhile, on the B2B side, there are significant internal resources and bandwidth that can be leveraged, but it can also be complicated to get all of those things lined up and ready to go. On the one-to-one side, the financial risk is highly personal. If someone is paying with their personal credit card to work with you, they might be dipping into their vacation fund, their rent, their mortgage, or even their lifestyle. It's going on their personal credit card. On the B2B side of things, real decision makers inside of organizations, they have a low personal financial risk. It's not their money, which means the relationship to that financial decision is very different. And often It's not emotional for them. They just want to be able to justify the spend in exchange for that return on investment. On the one-to-one client side of the table, you've got limited expansion opportunities. Maybe some family members, maybe some connections, but it's just not the same once you get inside an organization where there's always another department, there's always another decision maker available that could use your help. The lifetime client value is enormous when working with organizations, but that's also going to change the nature of your strategies heading into these companies. And last but not least has to do with changes in decision makers. When you're selling to a one-to-one client, it's always going to be that individual that you're talking to. But on the side of B2B organizations, there could be constant changes with the decision maker that you have a relationship with. In fact, one of the biggest reasons that people lose a client is because there's a change at the top in terms of who that decision maker is. That's why we always say to folks, don't be skinny in your relationships inside of companies. You've got to make sure you're building relationships with as many decision makers as possible inside an organization, because you never know when one of those decision makers is going to quit, be fired, or be reassigned, or even be promoted. So these are just some of the differences between selling to one-to-one clients versus selling to corporate decision makers. It's really important to understand these differences because 99% of the marketing strategies that are shared on the internet today are all geared toward this side of the chart. That's why if you've been doing things like master classes and download this resource or sign up for a free discovery call, you've been trying to take the tactics that are designed for this side of the chart and hope that they're going to work with decision makers inside of organizations. It's just not going to translate because the psychographics and the realities of working with B2B decision makers is so different than working with this side of the chart. I promised to share with you something really important, and here it is. 99% of the tactics and strategies for marketing and sales that are shared online today, whether it's on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, in email, etc., are all tactics that are designed for selling in this world, selling to one-to-one clients, whether those are consumers or individual leaders or solo business owners. Almost everything that you see online today is all designed for this half of the chart. And if you're trying to apply those strategies, things like free master classes, free downloads, e-newsletters, free discovery sessions, and you're trying to apply those strategies to this side of the chart, you're probably feeling pretty frustrated. And that's because the dynamics and the psychology of selling to decision makers is radically different than selling to one-to-one clients. So make sure you're in the right community and you're surrounding yourself with the right strategies that are designed for selling to B2B decision makers. That gives you a lot to think about, but there is so much more for us to share with you. So to help you dig in even more, I've dropped a link right below to the next video you're gonna go watch right now. I'll see you over there.